What is your purpose here? How many of you are there?
Welcome to Voyage of the Geek for this 24th of March 2019. Joining me, as always, Dan Miller, Tom McGill, and potentially at any point in time we may be joined by our fourth member, Rick Legato.
The ghost of Rick Legato.
If we were betting men, gentlemen, would we? What would be the odds that we'll be joined by Rick this evening?
Zero.
So Dan's not a betting man.
Well, he's 15 minutes late, and we haven't heard from him, so I suppose he's probably not coming.
Yes. And he's probably got his schedule mixed up because of the prolific recording schedule that we've had for the show in 2019.
Yes. Yeah. We said, we're going to do one in 2019. And he's like, I thought you guys said 2020.
Half past 2019.
And I believe the last time we did a show was in 2018. It was our yearly wrap-up show.
Is this the first show for this year?
This is the first show for the year, yes. That's correct. And it'll be potentially...
Well, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year. And potentially the last show for this studio. Some exciting news coming up in the next few weeks, month in front of us. But we'll get to that down the track. So tonight we're going to have a look at a bit of classic cinema in the truest sense, given that it wasn't a box office tentpole mega hit, but it has stood the test of time and is still gracing televisions and, if there is such a thing, video stores all around the world.
It wasn't a flop either. When you say it wasn't a hit, people might think it was a flop. It wasn't.
No,
it was a very
that's
successful film.
Absolutely.
And had great critical reviews, and lots of people gave it, standing ovations.
Yep, absolutely. Had a, and of course we're talking about Capricorn One, and it had a fairly low budget.
5 million?
5 million, yeah. We don't really know what the box office earnings was for the film. I haven't been able to locate that.
1977, 5 million. So I don't know, add a little bit to that for today, 5 million.
Well, no, 5 million was the budget to make it. What it earned at the box office, I don't know.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you.
No.
But if you were to calculate earnings for the between now and then, very successful film. I think it's available on all the mediums: DVD, Blu-rays, streaming. It is, and there's a lot of people that know of this particular film. Dan, how were you introduced to the film? Did you see it early days, or was it one of those titles that jumped off the video store shelf at you?
I don't think I saw it in the theatre, and I think it is one of those titles that jumped out of the video store, the Blockbuster video store, into my hand, and watched it at home. And it's one that I've just never, ever forgotten.
Yeah.
Never forgotten.
Yeah. What about you, Tom?
I watched it as a kid on TV, and watched it once. It stayed in memory, like Dan said, but what I mainly remember from the film is people crawling through the desert, being very, very thirsty and getting shot, and dying one after the other. So I remembered the end vividly. The whole desert theme, the running at the slow motion at the very end.
At the cemetery?
Yeah, the cemetery. But also watching it as a teenager and then not watching it for decades, also in my mind got it somewhat mixed up with The Right Stuff.
Yep.
So Capricorn One and The Right Stuff were two movies that I sort of melded together for many years and never knew quite which one was which.
Yep. And I guess a lot of NASA control room scenes, launch scenes, things like that. You could
people in white jumpsuits.
You could be forgiven, I guess.
Poses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hang on, just before we go on to you. So what were the standout? Maybe we should do more of this.
Yeah,
what was the thing that because I've got a couple of things for Capricorn One that stood out.
That's stuck in memory.
Yeah, that are like these tentpole things, these pinpoints.
Yep.
One is the dude climbing up the cliff,
Uh-huh.
and when he gets up to the cliff,
Telling a joke.
but when he gets up to the cliff, he's like dead after he gets up to the cliff, and I was like, oh man. So that kind of stuck with me. The other one was the joke, the funny quip when they've got the gun, and he says, "You want the gun?" And he says, "No, I'd probably shoot my foot off." And he hands it to the other guy. "You want the gun?" "No, I'd probably shoot his foot off."
Yep.
Those two things, just like with these shining moments that stuck in my memory forever.
What about you, Tom? Do you have something that is distinctly memorable about the film
as
from
I
its
said,
original?
It's the desert stuff.
Yep.
That stuck with me. The fact that they're so very thirsty and dusty and the pain that they go through, that stuck in my head.
For me, it was definitely the Telly Savalas character.
Telly's awesome.
He's the best.
Telly Savalas, famously the TV detective Kojak that was always sucking on a Chubba Chub lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
And this awesome introduction of the character with Elliot
Gould.
Elliot Gould.
Yep.
He runs up to
He's
a crop
immediately
duster.
an asshole, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a crop duster, right? And he's standing next to his plane. And Elliot Gould needs his services to potentially rescue the astronauts.
He doesn't even know that he needs to rescue them.
Yeah.
He just wants to find them.
That's
at the time,
right,
doesn't he?
And he
Although
runs over and he says, "Mr. Albane, how much do you charge for your to dust a field?" He says, "$25." Is it? I'd like to hire your plane. That'll be $100. You said it was 25. Yeah, that's for farmers, and you're clearly not a farmer, which means you're rich.
yeah.
Okay, here's $100. No, it's $125 because you accepted 100 too quickly.
Yeah, which means you got more in your pocket.
And later in the plane, he says, "I want a third of the loot because you're probably perverts who robbed a bank."
That's right. The very next line, he says, "Because you said yes to 100 too quick, which means you can afford it, and you're probably a pervert."
yeah.
Where do you get it from?
Yeah, he's calling everybody
I'm ashamed
perverts.
that they put that quote in there because I found the one preceding this even funnier. When he says,
About
what's it called?
The A and A crop dusting.
Ask me which, who's the person in charge here? Ask, can you see the sign? Yeah. Read it out loud. He's immediately an asshole, and even his own son, he studied law. I think he's a pervert, so I'm now both of those.
Yeah, fired him.
That's right.
Something or other.
That's right. So yeah, for me it was that particular character. But I was similar. There was a couple of weird made-for-television movies that were based around Mars and Mars exploration, and might have been some alien twists going on there. Not your standard big eye ET extra, aliens. These were weird, sort of almost. I forget the name of the film, but there was some made-for-telly movies that sort of had a similar colour space. There was something about it, and I too blurred a couple of movies together into this film.
And footage from this, as I read up on it, recurred in the A-Team and recurred in the Fall Guy TV shows. There's stunts in here that were expensive to do. Helicopters crashing and cars going off bridges into the water. So they reused the footage for later television in the 80s.
The car going off the bridge into the water was in the actual opening credit sequence for the Fall Guy.
Spurious.
Really?
I say that's spurious because I watched the opening credits for the Fall Guy
And you couldn't
today
find it.
because I thought I saw that, and it's not in there.
Nightmare.
There are cars falling off, but it's not that shot.
It might have been, I remember the Fall Guy format was the first 40 seconds to a minute and a half of the film is the main character in the Fall Guy actually doing a stunt, a movie stunt.
Lee Majors,
And then he sort of crossfades back to him at home where he gets a mission because
Finished his day's work.
he
or
was
whatever.
he was a bounty hunter, and but he would always start every episode with a stunt from a film, and I think that might be where the crossover comes from.
Yeah, but they also finished every episode with a stunt because there's always he does some sort of stunt with a car jump, and then later on in the show when they chase the bad guys, he does the car jump that he practiced when he did the movie. So there's always that recurring element.
The stunt people rated this In the film, there is a chase with 2 helicopters and a biplane, and it's rated as one of the most dangerous aerial stunt sequences
Well, they're
of
touching.
all time.
They're flying.
Friggin'
That's
amazing.
right.
With,
They're
with
sort
a
of
guy on a wing.
That's right. Yeah.
And they're touching.
Yeah, and they're literally banging the treads from the helicopter
While flying
on
through
top.
canyons.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a stunning shot where the biplane goes over a cliff.
Yes.
And the second the wheels of that, there he's really low to the ground. The second the wheels pass the edge of the cliff, he just dives.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's like, man, I was thinking that guy must have at least looked on the other side of that cliff before he did that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of a
He comes
biplane.
rocketing over there.
The beauty of a small little biplane where you can just look out is it's like driving a little cat car. You're close to the stuff that you interact with, and you're very maneuverable. You couldn't do it with a larger plane, probably.
Yeah, I was watching it again later today, and I was just like really amazed at all of the stuff they were doing. Obviously, I think we're probably getting a bit out of whack here, but obviously they had the biplane on the back of a truck at a few stages.
A couple of stages, yeah.
And they might have had one guy in front of the camera who was like holding the prong that the helicopter lands on,
Yes.
and sort of banging it on the thing.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure. No, because you can see the background whooshing, and it doesn't look like blue screen.
Well, you might be right, but my point was, whatever special effects they were doing, they were very well done. They were very convincing.
Yeah. And I think Tom might be closer to the mark. I think they did physical. They got out there with
There's
crazy,
a lot of
with
stuff,
crazy stuntmen.
stuff in camera.
Yeah.
You can tell that because there's some shots where like when what's the Brunswick, the main character,
Brubaker, yes.
Yeah, when he's holding on, you see his hand starting to bleed from holding onto the cable. Those are close-ups that are not a stuntman. That's the actor. Barbara Streisand. James Brolin.
Brolin, who
And he, that's blue screen.
interestingly, like the connection to Barbara Streisand, she was married to Elliot Gould as well. She was married to 2 people in this film. And let's have a quick chat about the cast. So we have Elliot Gould, very famous actor, Academy Award-winning actor, I believe.
Yeah,
Curly
probably.
hair.
Yes, curly hair, neurotic, sort of almost Woody Allen-esque sort of character in film, would you say? He's he's introduced. I love the way he's introduced in this particular film, chatting up the
the woman,
the newsreader, the other news reporter, and it's got to be one of my all-time funniest introductions of a character in a film is her character, because she's cockeyed. Like she's like, am I just seeing that, or has she got a real cross thing going on? And she's looking obviously off camera, but one of her eyes is looking at you, breaking the wall, coming straight down the barrel of the camera, and that's the very first time we see her in the scene. Like, so he's chatting her up as they're waiting outside the wife of one of the astronauts' houses, and he's chatting her up and talking to her across camera, and she's looking straight off camera, but she's just looking down, and then after that, you can't see anything else. The only thing you can see is this weird sort of goofy look. She's a very famous actress, of course. So I'm talking about Karen Black, which I believe she won an Academy Award.
She's in lots and lots of.
I believe she's an Academy Award winner. I got a feeling she's been in some of those disaster movies of the
that's
70s.
it's that
Right.
time of the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. So we have Elliot Gould, James Brolin, father of Thanos.
Yeah, father of Thanos.
Brenda Vaccaro, Sam Waterston, who went on to be a famous district attorney in Law and Order. He's the funny guy in this. It doesn't always hit the mark, I guess, with some of his humour.
He's the third or the second astronaut.
Yeah,
because
but
they
it'd be a
haven't mentioned the third
bit
yet.
dry, I guess, without his sort of attempt at humour.
I don't think, like, Telly Savalas obviously came in at the end and just run rings around all of that.
Yep.
So no, he didn't kind of hit it always.
So who was the big casting point of interest for this particular film?
What's his name? Dr. James Kellaway? You talking about?
No.
What's his name?
No.
Who? Oh, O.J. Simpson.
Yes,
He
O.J.
wasn't
Simpson.
that. Oh, he was famous, of course, because he was a footballer at the time already.
He was about as
Well
famous
known.
as you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
as an athlete in like Americans hold their football superstars higher than Olympic superstars. As far as sports go, there's basketball and basketball, baseball, and football, and he was about as good as you get as a footballer.
I'm seeing from here, it looks like he was in a bunch of stuff before.
A couple of things. He was I got a feeling he was like the security control room guy from A Towering Inferno.
Yeah, it says here Towering Inferno. Yeah.
And
so he's doing a few cameos.
Yeah, and as the trivia sort of bears out, he was destined to be in this film. Was it the director who was mandated? I think the director was told that O.J. Simpson is going to be in this film, and I think he didn't particularly want to put O.J. Simpson in the film because he didn't believe that he had the acting ability that he needed for the film. But he had no choice.
He's all right.
He had no choice, and as it turned out, he actually nailed it.
Yeah.
He wasn't too bad.
No, he's all right.
But he didn't have anything to do in the film.
No, he didn't. But what he did have to do, he did well. Like it can't be easy for an athlete who's never really done any serious method acting or serious stage acting or training to do that that scene where he's hallucinating, he's talking to himself in the desert, and he's hallucinating, thinking he's seeing things, and it turns out it's the helicopters, and then he goes through those throes of giving up, that human point where I can't run anymore.
Well, we might have to talk about that, but I didn't like that bit of the movie. There's a few bits of the movie that I didn't like.
Yep.
And that was one of them.
So he obviously goes on to do other filming roles. He was famously Nordberg in the Naked Gun
in the
films.
movies.
He's quite famous in those. And then his big entertainment role was when he violently stabbed his ex-wife to death.
Allegedly.
No, he's pretty much admitted it. he wrote a book. Didn't he write a book saying, I did it? And it was like, I think the title was called If I Did It, but if was really, really small, and the I did it was in a different font.
Right, okay.
And so you give it the squint test, and it actually says I did it.
Okay.
And it was all about him saying, if I did it, this is how I did it. And he literally admits exactly how it was done.
Okay.
Anyway.
Whatever.
Yep. Telly Savalas, Karen Black, Hal Holbrook. Now, he has been in a lot. He obviously is the nemesis, the bad guy in the film, who really is a good bad guy in that he's not a bad guy. He's trying to save the jobs and the livelihood.
The best bad guys are people who are believing in what they're doing is right.
Yeah. He's the NASA program head, I guess.
Doesn't want to be bad. He wants to do the right thing, and he's
Yep.
not willing to make sacrifices for what he believes is the correct thing.
Yeah.
It's like Thanos again.
And then we get into a bunch of sort of also ran roles further down the list, but they were the main. And there's some big actors in this film.
There's some big actors. Run off. One of the things that I found difficult was that I couldn't remember a single person's name in the whole thing. You know, there's John, there's Gary, there's Janet, Pete.
Well, Brubaker is memorable, but if I had to said to you Brubaker, you probably wouldn't be able to put it with
And
this.
he's not willing to make sacrifice.
I couldn't even... Oh, we had a ghost there. I couldn't even remember Brubaker for most of the time. I got it in the end, because that was the name that most
And
people...
he's got a bloody name tag.
Oh, yeah.
There's 3 of them that always run around with a name tag.
If his name was Buzz Lightyear, I would have remembered. But it was not. It was Gary Brubaker Smith.
Yep.
Anyway...
All right. Well, let's have a chat about the narrative now, or the film itself, as far as its pathway in the narrative journey from start to finish. Dan, you can step us through this process. Where do we start with this film?
I broke it up into 3 acts, and there's a few major sort of points in each of the 3 acts. So the first one is the first act, and we start off with the introduction, which I think was fairly memorable. When I read a few reviews, people all kind of remembered, and that's the launch. So they're going to launch the rocket.
An interesting introduction into some politicians.
And a bunch of politicians.
Well, nicely introduced.
I've got some breaking news.
Oh, okay.
Rick has written into the show.
Oh, he's writing in.
Oh shit! I've been crook all day and forgot all about it. I haven't even watched the film.
Ask him how much he remembers and when he first saw it.
Can you remember any of the characters' names?
So we have confirmation.
He's
Rick
lying.
will not be joining us for this show. And if we did join us, I'm not sure what he could add to the show. Maybe about the same as normal.
He'd have some funny quips to add, I'm sure.
Hopefully he's at home now, wishing he was here. Now that we're sticking it to him while he's not here. Sorry, Dan. Continue.
Can't defend himself. Okay, so where was I? Launch. So they're going to launch the rocket. So there's a big NASA thing. Launch countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Big old Saturn V rocket.
Big old Saturn V. Was that what it was?
Yep.
It was originally an Apollo rocket, yes.
Yep.
And there's a big senator and some bigwigs and the vice president, but not
Is
the
senator a nice guy?
actual president. No, the senater's a hard-ass bastard.
He's a big
He's a prick.
he's a
prick.
He's a bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they make sure to tell you that. So we're supposed to not be sympathetic to him.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But we kind of respect him because he's a bit smarmy, but he kicks fucking ass.
Yeah.
And if he wants a box of tissues and they've got to have pink polka dots on them, heads are going to roll until that turns up on his desk.
And he's shitty because only the vice president turned up,
Yeah.
and not the president.
But he's got his heart in the right place, right?
That's right. Yeah.
He-
Well, like the NASA dude, you know, they all believe
Yep.
in what they need, what they want to do is important, and they're willing to do whatever it takes.
his heart's in the right place for the film, of course, because what he's trying to promote is American imperialism.
That's right.
So, but within the context of the story, he's one of the good guys.
Yep.
Is he though? Isn't he?
Well, certainly at this stage,
Because they got the finance. Well, okay. Let's
well,
not,
we can
yeah.
we can discuss who are the bad guys in the film,
Yep.
and well, okay,
I
so
don't. I don't. He doesn't come across as a bad guy. He's just a smarmy dick. Like I think
I just yeah,
he's shitty for the right reasons.
He's a
The
hard-ass
president should have been there. Like it's the first manned flight
to
Mars.
Yeah.
The president probably should have been there, and instead he found something else that was more busy.
Yeah. So the other big sort of plot point that happens there is the astronauts are marched into the capsule at the top. They're all plugged in, and then just before they're launching, somebody knocks on the door and says, "Can you guys just come out for a second? We just need to check something."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What? We just plugged all the plugs in."
Yep.
And they take them out, and then they put them in a little bus, and they drive them away, and it's like, where are we going? We were going to Mars.
And from the outside world, no one sees this.
Yeah.
The outside world has seen them cross the gantry, get into the capsule, then everybody clears out, and this guy, sneaky, runs up there in his FBI-looking or CIA-looking suit and tells them to get out and come with them. So the rest of the world has no idea that they're out of the capsule.
Yep.
And it launches.
And they get into an airplane and they just fly off completely somewhere else.
Yep.
Okay, so the story moves along. It doesn't they're not messing around with the story. And then the next important scene I've labelled, which is fairly important in the thing, is Kellaway's speech. So eventually the astronauts who get taken off, get taken on an airplane, get put into some room somewhere, and they're all marching up and down saying, "What's going on? What's going on?"
Yep.
And eventually Kellaway, the director of NASA, or whoever he is, marches into the room, and he's gonna tell them what's going on. Okay, so what are some of the things that you remember that happened in that little speech?
Well, I know that he starts the speech all about when we met each other, you were you were nothing.
We were the best as friends, and
And we came through all this, and we put all this together, and it was all about establishing the connection
The dream.
with the boys, and I'm one of you, and we're buds and pals.
yeah.
Yeah, he needs to sell this because the hardest thing in this film to get across to make believable is why would the astronauts go along with that? They've trained for years. It's their reputation. They have to lie to their families to the day they die.
You're getting a bit ahead of us.
Yeah, but in his mind, he has to prepare them to be convinced.
And as part of that speech, he lays out what the problem was, and the problem.
So there is actually a problem, according to Kellaway.
Well,
There's
that's
a problem
right.
with the
he
rocket.
said that the rocket was built. The technology was built by people that contractors that quoted, and part of that quote is to come up with a plan, come up with the technology, but also make a profit. Well, it turns out that the people that created the life support system made a little bit too much profit. I think that was his exact quote.
Yes.
A little bit too much profit.
And not enough life support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they reckon there's a problem with the life support, and that's why. So why did they have to pull them off the rocket?
They were going to die.
They were going to
They
die.
were literally going to die.
But why didn't they just switch the rocket off and say, "All right, we got a problem here"?
It was it was important that they that the program worked, and it was otherwise they would never get any money again.
Because they'd spent a lot of money, and there was a lot riding on it, and if they didn't launch, then Congress would say, you guys don't know what you're doing.
And it was pressures directly from the president as well.
And you're going to lose all that money.
Yep.
Okay, so he takes them into another room, and what do they see before their eyes? They go into another room full of little NASA dudes with
sort of a mini
consoles.
control room, a mini control center.
Room. Okay, and then he sort of says, "Okay, now I'm going to take you into the other room." And what do we see in the other room?
A soundstage with a mock Mars surface and a lander.
A fake lander.
And a capsule off to one side as well.
Yeah. There's all these
Backgrounds,
lights and
big lights.
cameras.
Yep. Basically a Hollywood soundstage.
So they're going to fake it.
Yep.
And Kellaway is still trying to convince the astronauts that, so they're still umming and ahhing and whatever, and he's trying to convince them. So what's his argument? What argument does he make to convince them that what they're doing is the right thing to do, which is they're going to fake it. They're going to pretend to, "Hi, everybody, we're calling in from Mars," when really they're just in a shed somewhere, out the back of Mexico.
Well, apart from, there's sort of three arguments.
Well, what's his first argument?
First argument is the people, like all the people that are employed and the
So
whole
we
program.
all worked really hard.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't let this cool program go down.
away.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
The second argument was that, you have to. You just have to do it. You have to help. And he said it about 5 times. Like, you have to help.
There was another argument that he
And
made.
then the last argument was, well, your families are all
save the last argument. Wait for the second argument.
Okay, what's the second argument?
The second argument that he makes is that people have no hope. Mothers and fathers are getting divorced. The divorce rate's going up, and neighbours don't like each other.
Society's doomed.
Society's doomed, and everybody's down on their luck and feeling depressed and annoyed. And you guys, and he says, and he guilt trips them. You guys are the ones that are meant to be giving people hope. Yep. You guys can't pull out now, you bastards. Everybody, little girls and boys across, they'll all be sad.
Yeah. That's right.
And if you don't do it, we'll kill your family.
You have to help.
So the next argument.
Oh, well, that's because also some of the money givers were people in high places with
That's right.
power that he can't control. And
It's nothing to do with me.
Can't guarantee your safety.
Because they started, the astronauts start to question, why do we have to do it?
So
don't
they're
have
still
to do
not
this.
really convinced, right?
Yeah. Like,
And
what's
so-
going to happen if we don't do it?
And
Well,
so-
you have to help. And that's when he finally said, well, there are people involved in this.
You have to think
there
of
are really dangerous people involved in this.
I think what he says is you have to think of your families.
And obviously he's talking about like some sort of government agency, CIA or something like that, that are involved in it, that don't play around. They don't mess around. And that's where in this film you start to wonder how involved he is in that side. Is he just aware of it, or is he actually calling the shots? And we find out later on that he's got a lot more power he's got a lot more say in it than he makes out.
Well, at least he's the executioner. He makes the decision.
Yeah.
He might have his own family to think about. I don't know.
No, he's definitely calling the shots later on, isn't he?
Because if he doesn't call up and say, "Don't set off the bomb," all their families will apparently get blown up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not true as well. Remember?
No, it's not true at all. They're not on a plane. They're at the exact same point in time. They're at home with news people all on their front lawns. They're not on a plane. That's just a threat.
So where's this guy coming from? Is the question we need to sort of think about as we go through the movie.
Yep.
Okay. So that's an introduction to him, and that kicks off the main part of the story. There's probably another team. So we've got the astronauts, and we've got this Kellaway dude who's the boss from NASA, and we've seen the president.
Well, where
and
does it? First of all,
the senators and
it's
everybody?
worth mentioning, where does the data come from? Like, the whole time this mission is going on, information is being fed out to the world through the media. Where is that information coming from? It's coming from the recordings of their simulations. basically they do
yes,
really
so the
involved
yeah.
simulations, and all of the radio calls that are part of those simulations make up the recordings that get used. Now, the reason I bring it up is that it's the theory, it's the main theory that a lot of people use that don't believe we went to the moon. In fact, this particular film very likely is based on books that were released in the 70s by people that believe we didn't go to the moon. Well, that believe we went to the moon, but the stuff we saw on television was not real. Some believe, some very prominent scientists that worked on the actual program released books in the 70s that said we couldn't possibly have gone to the moon. There's no way we could have gone through the Van Allen belt and all these other scientific reasons why we could never have gone there. But that was a well-known sort of theory in those days, and they drew on a lot of those theories for this film. And I think the writer of the film, the director-writer, had to shelve it for a while because there wasn't enough interest, and then Watergate came along, and all of a sudden there was no trust in government, and bang, there you have this.
We got our market.
Yeah, here we go.
Well, this leads us into our next team. The next team to introduce is the pair of characters, one mainly, who is investigative reporters.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what's his name?
Elliot Gould, or his real name.
No, his character name. So you can't remember their names.
Robert Caulfield.
Caulfield, that's right, Caulfield. So there's Caulfield. We also get a quick introduction to
His mate.
his wife.
And his mate.
Yeah, and
who
his
works
mate.
at NASA.
Who's
His
this
mate
NASA
works
nerd.
in the control center. What's it called? What's it called? The room with all the monitors and the big screens, and what's that
Yeah,
called?
control center works for me.
Yeah.
No, there's a name for it. There's a... What's the bloody name for it? The
control center.
Capcom.
No, there's a very famous name for the control center at NASA, and I'm spewing that the three of us can't think
No,
of it.
sorry.
It'll come to me.
All right, so it turns out that Caulfield, our investigative reporter, just so happens to know one of the nerdy NASA geeks who works in that very control center. And that's the first act. And we're all set up with
Mission Control.
Mission Control. There you go. Okay.
Never heard of it.
We've got an introduction to everybody, and that's probably the first act.
That's right. And the friend that works at Mission Control, how are we introduced to him? He goes over to one of his bosses and says,
Superiors,
"What?
yeah,
What does he say?"
He says he's found a widget that's not reporting the data flow from the inverse flux capacitor, and something's weird going on here.
And what's
He's
the
confused.
And the weird thing is that he blurts out,
Too close. It sounds like the signal's
too close.
Too close.
Like it's way too close.
Yeah, so
They're supposed to be half a million miles away.
It's not matching up.
And it's coming from Nevada.
And the big honchos go, "Oh, really? Well,
which terminal are you on? 37. Oh, we've had problems with 37. It sounds like every other fucking IT department.
I reckon they could have. There's a few things that I would have improved. Some of the conversations I felt were very convincing and very well written, but a few of them, like that one, it might have been better to just put a little bit more doubt into the audience's mind, like the head honcho, instead of saying, "Oh yes, well, don't worry about that. Whoa, look, what in the world could that be?" Yeah. Just to say something like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Haven't we had trouble with that terminal?" And then the guy has to admit, "Well, yeah, we have." And then he says, "Well, it's probably that." He says, "But no, that was to do with the lights or something else, and that was fixed." And he's like, whatever. All right, Act 2. Again, the movie just jumps right into it, and so I put the start of Act 2 as, the lie from Mars. So this is where we're just they've already arrived at Mars. They've already faked arrived at Mars.
Yep.
So apparently they've been living in this thing out the back of Mexico for the last 9 months or something or other.
Yep.
They do say it. I didn't take note of it, but they keep blending in. It starts January the 4th, and it goes.
Yeah. September and dates go by.
we're supposed to know how long
what's
it takes.
the closest point that Mars is with current technology? Is it 3 months or 9 months?
I think it's 6 months.
That's the closest.
You're measuring
it
it
can
in
be.
months.
It depends on what you send. It depends on if you send humans, it takes a bit longer than if you send a space probe.
And obviously, you got to be at the right cycle of orbit
Or
to minimise the trip.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. At the closest approach, they're 150 million miles apart, Earth and Mars. But
Yeah. But you're booking, like, what do they get up to? Like 30,000 miles per second or something?
hundreds
like
of kilometers an hour.
Just stupidly fast. No, it's thousands. Like doesn't the space station, the International Space
ISS.
Station is something like 13,000 meters per second or something like that. It is booking.
Oh yeah, it has to go around the Earth in 90 minutes.
Yeah, it is booking. So imagine you fire the boosters out with nothing stopping you, no friction, no nothing. Don't you exponentially get faster?
Well, as long as you
Potentially.
accelerate, yeah.
But remember, you got to stop on the other
You got to
end. as well.
decelerate
You gotta
halfway through. You got to turn around and start putting the brakes on.
It's all about how much juice you got left.
All right, so they do the full fake thing.
Yeah.
They're like this national thing going on, and there's like first man on Mars, and then they've got
Well, they've got to land,
report in
and
from-
that's a big broadcast coming up. And when they land, there's a recorded. And this is a little bit of a plot problem. The narrator, the sort of a voiceover suggests that they're going to play a recording of the president because the president can't talk to them directly because
There's a lag.
The
time
delay is
delay,
too much. And then within 15 minutes, the wives are talking to them directly
That's on
Yeah.
the way back.
without a lag.
That's on the way back
I
already,
don't
isn't
think
it?
it's on the way back. No, it's before. I think it's before they land, when they're talking about and this is the first time Brubaker actually drops a bit of a hint in there, a bit of a secret hint in there. But yeah, they have to land and fake the actual,
walking. I'm on the third step. I'm on the second step.
including
Over.
some kind of profound statement before the jump off. Can you remember what
Oh
that
yeah,
is?
the ultra slow motion. No.
Yeah, they're in
That's
the
right.
TV thing. Hit slow motion.
It's quite literally a slow motion button.
Yeah. So the thing that I really liked about it, that I thought was some excellent cinematography and storytelling, was that we're watching it from all around the world. We're watching it on this TV, and we're watching it in this person's home,
Yeah.
and some people in the street are watching the first man on Mars. Huzzah! And then as the president's speech starts to talk, the president's going, "You're the first man on Mars. This is brilliant. Peace to everybody."
Yep.
And then he starts going into some sort of specific stuff, and then we swap to a new camera, and it's the camera in the fake studio.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that camera is slowly pulling back, and you can see the lights, and you can see it's all fake. And that's exactly when the president is saying, you show us how high we can reach, you are the last, show us what we are capable of.
That's it.
You're the truth behind everything that we hope to be,
Oh, see, can you see?
So it was, cleverly
Nicely
put
done,
together that at that point in the speech, all the fakeness was visible to us, the audience.
The cliched Hollywood thing where people gather around television screens in electronic shops.
Or
outside
in the
on
city
road,
street,
where they
yeah,
can't
you
hear
know.
a word.
Or
what's
they're
going
all
on.
gathered
Yes,
around a
yes.
taxi cab because he's got his radio
Yeah.
playing. Or something.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you in life? Is there anything that's happened in
It's usually
in your life?
annoying when it's at some concert and somebody next to them brought the little TV. You just want them to slap them and take it away from them.
You mean you didn't gather around the devices in Harvey Norman when
No.
Princess Diana was killed or something like that? It's
Yeah.
never happened to me. But it's in every friggin' film.
So they just go straight for it, and they just do that scene, which
Yep.
is what was needed in the movie. The next major plot point that I've got is the deep end of the pool. So Caulfield, our investigative reporter, knows a NASA nerd.
They go and meet for a drink. They're
Yeah.
mates.
They play pool.
They play pool. He goes to the bar and comes back.
Well, he gets called. No, he talks to his friend, and his friend says, "Oh, there's odd stuff. Shut up and play pool."
Yeah.
You know, you think, get the
And that's
stomach
what I
bug.
really like that conversation
He does,
because
he does drop some information.
Eventually he says, "Oh, there's no way that the signal could have been that far." And the moment that he says
Doesn't
that,
he actually say a distance? He says,
he says something.
300 k's.
Yeah, it's mostly 300 k's away or something. And then the phone rings, and the guy gets called to the bar, and it's a bogus caller who says, "Hello, I can't hear you. What? No."
Yeah.
Very bad connection.
Yep.
And he just gets distracted.
Yep.
So they've been following for how many days, and then the moment the guy, drops some information, he gets taken out of the picture.
Yep.
Okay, so that was a good synopsis of exactly what's happening. I've got here, so yeah, what is going on here? What is going on here? Because that means that the CIA must be like, well, whoever it is,
Whoever
right?
it is, yeah.
They're like in the bar
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Listening.
And they do a
The
fake
table,
phone call.
they're standing behind them, essentially.
Yeah,
Listening
yeah.
to the conversation.
Yeah. Though the movie never hints. It never looks at some skeezy looking guy with a cigarette, going looking or anything. The movie never gives you anything.
Yep.
Doesn't throw you anything. And even the phone call, you could only sort of on the second time watching it did I sort of twig that. Hang on, that's a bit of a fishy phone call.
Yeah.
I could have believed on the first time watching that it was just a random phone call. Yeah, what? No. And then his mates disappeared.
Yeah.
Never to be seen again.
Yeah.
And
Never to be
not
seen
even doesn't get seen again. Doesn't exist anymore.
They erased him.
He's erased.
'Cause-
His apartment is.
the
somebody
main,
else lives there.
Yep. The reporter, obviously wondering where the fuck his mate went, goes to his apartment, and the door is answered by a woman saying that it's her house, and I don't know who you're talking about. No one by that name has ever lived here.
On watching it the second or third time, I thought that some of the dialogue in that was a bit awkward because he was like, "Is this Gary Smith's house of 223 XYZ Street?"
Yeah.
And then she says, "No, it could be the other building." They talk blah blah blah, and he says, "I've been here 1,000,000 times." And then it's like, well, if you've been here 1,000,000 times, you wouldn't just ask, "Is this Gary Smith's house?"
Exactly.
You'd say, "The fuck is Gary?
Yeah, that's right.
Get out of this house, you crazy woman!"
Then proceeds to go through a mail and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Which he does.
Yep. So,
Okay.
it's established that the fix is in, and somebody has abducted his mate. After releasing enough information to the reporter to what's his name, mate? What's his Caulfield, to move forward on the trail of a story. He's convinced.
He gets a little. He gets his curiosity.
He's on a
perked.
story here.
And I liked the dialogue when he was playing pool because he was dismissive.
Yeah,
Very.
yeah. I like
Right,
that
so
too.
he said,
That was nice.
the NASA guy said, "I think it could be coming from Mexico."
Yeah.
And he says, "Really? Could it be coming from somewhere else?" And he says, "Well, maybe. I don't know." And he says, "Well, right. Well, there you go then. Play pool, you idiot." So, he wasn't like the writers
Yeah.
were pushing too hard. That's
No,
really...
but the moment your mate disappears, there's a story.
Then he's then he's like, "Hang on a minute. What's going on here?"
Yep.
Okay, so so that's that step when he goes to visit his mate's house. There's another part to it. There's part B to going and visiting his mate's house because immediately when he's finished his mate's house, he gets into
is
his
that the
car.
Is that, so they sabotage the car
right.
and
They blow his
sabotage
car
the
up.
the brakes.
So his car has no brakes.
The brakes.
Yeah,
the brakes.
yeah.
It's the brakes.
And the key, the ignition key, and everything. It's just
Yes,
nothing.
yeah,
Well,
is
not
working.
only did the
It's
did the
constantly accelerating.
not only did the CIA cut his brakes, they sped the film up
They,
as well.
they put an accelerator.
We'll put
constant
this
accelerator.
time warp machine into
because
his car.
not only did the car go really fast, so did the people walking on the sideline and the
They've
kid's
got-
riding beside the road.
They've got some serious technology down at the CIA, I tell you. But what I did like was, as Tom said, they said, "Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to kill him." I don't know. How did they organise this? I mean, he was going to visit his mate,
Yes.
the NASA nerd.
Yes.
So remember that these guys are following him in their car, probably, because we get
Yeah.
nobody tells us anything in this movie,
They
right?
don't kill unless they need to.
But
So at the
also,
earliest,
in the hour or so from when the NASA nerd left, even if he didn't go home after work, they're really only talking about a very small amount of time where they redecorated his entire apartment.
that's
was-
right. It's
yeah,
the next
yeah,
day
yeah,
almost, right? And also when they
And the car as well, because he arrives at the apartment, the car's still
right,
intact.
right. So imagine there's two CIA guys following Caulfield, and they're like, "Hey, I think he's going to NASA Nerd's house. Do you reckon?" And there's like, "Yeah. It's only a couple of turns away. He probably is going to NASA Nerd's house." And so what do? They're like,
Oh, gotta sabotage the car.
"Well, we
in
need to
five-
call up
5
Gary
seconds.
the mechanic to come and snip his brake lines
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
or other."
So it leads to one of the all-time hilarious / action-packed vehicle
Sped up.
sequences in Hollywood history, clearly sped up. reminded me of the Naked Gun. You know that where he goes through a servo and then he goes through.
They do labour it a little, don't they?
Yeah.
He
goes
drives
to narrow-
halfway across the town out of control at 100 miles an hour, doing 2 spins of. He
when
does
you
at
think
least
it's-
one full 360
Yeah, he
in the
does.
middle of a street.
and then races down on the other side of the road on the wrong
It
side.
borders on ridiculous and then steps into ridiculous a couple of times, then comes back from the brink.
And I love what Tom said when he tries everything in the car and the brakes and the gear sticks don't work, and then he tries the ignition and the whole ignition thing comes out with the key still stuck in it.
Yeah.
You know,
So the guy that did all that damage
did a
in the
number.
4 minutes that he was inside.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
a professional, that
Oh,
dude.
yeah, he's
he's
not
like,
bad at all.
I'm going to snip everything.
Yeah.
Snip, snip, snip.
Cut it off.
Snipping doesn't do it, Dan. You got to put new hardware in there to keep the car accelerating constantly. Because he's trying to brake, and you see the accelerometer.
Yeah.
It just goes up and up and up. So there's something that makes the car go faster.
Yep.
All
So
right.
it ends up in the drink. He comes to
He,
an
of course.
drawbridge.
opening
No,
drawbridge.
it's
Yeah.
not that he comes to an open drawbridge. It's of course he comes to an
That's
open
right.
drawbridge.
He veers off from the traffic that are waiting at the drawbridge and goes up the other side of the road where somebody has accidentally left some sandbags that stop the actual that help the process of going up the drawbridge.
They got a
and
guy
he
with
ends up in the
flags
drink.
standing there who waves, tries to wave him back, and
Jumps
then
out of the
jumps
way.
out at the last second.
That's right. And he ends up in the drink. And at that point, you think, oh, he might be dead.
Nope, he's just wet.
And he-
Water in movie never kills people.
Yeah.
You can fall from orbit. It's not going to kill
So we see him sort of clinging to a barnacle-clad post, and he's not dead. And then we cut to another scene. Where are we, Dan?
The next story beat is where they do get the call from, so that the wives
That's right.
are going to call the spaceship.
That's right.
Now, I think they might be on the way back or something
Yep.
like that,
Yep.
as we discussed before.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all talking, and it's all kind of, hi, I lovey-dovey and all that sort of stuff. But the important point is that Brew has a cunning plan.
He has announced it to his friends earlier that he's not going to go along with it anymore.
This is
The audience, are aware that he's planning to blow the whole thing.
Commander
Okay.
Brubaker, the James
Josh.
Josh
No,
James,
just
Ja-
dad.
James Brolin. It's
Actor guy.
Thanos'
dad. Thanos' dad has an idea.
It's
He's
Mr.
gonna,
Thanos to you.
they
Old
clearly
man.
all three astronauts have decided to lie.
Was it just Brubaker?
convincingly?
No,
convincingly.
not all
Just-
three
no,
astronauts.
it's just
No, they did. They all lied, but he dropped.
Oh, to lie to
he
the
dropped
yes.
a hint in
No,
there.
but this is the new lie that I'm talking about. Well, it's not a lie, but they're
Brubaker
going to
says he's
drop a
gonna,
hint.
Gonna come out with the truth, and the other two astronauts are saying, nah, maybe not. They're not happy with him wanting to be honest.
Okay, so what he does, what does he do?
He says something about a holiday that him and his wife had.
the
so
last holiday
so
at
for s-
Yosemite
yeah,
or something.
he puts some spurious information in there that his wife would recognize that there's something wrong
Yep.
without anybody else really realizing.
And the whole time, the cutoff button the finger was resting on the cutoff button in the fake control room, whilst who's our nemesis? What's his name again?
Kellaway.
Kellaway was on the phone to the fake control room saying, "Hold, wait,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
wait."
Because obviously very, very dangerous to them to have the astronauts live communicating.
That's right. Very.
They could at any moment.
it could all fall apart.
Yep.
So he says, thanks, and let's when I get
Let's go back to Yosemite like we did last summer.
last year.
And what did the wife do with that information?
She frowned for about 2 seconds,
And then did nothing.
and then went to, "Oh,
Yeah, luckily,
he's drunk."
if she had said something at the time.
But there's another important point there is that Caulfield, the hard-nosed reporter, he's
Yeah.
watching, and he's
Yeah.
like, "What's going on here?" Then?
He noticed her look, her reaction.
But of course, she didn't pick up on anything. But we come back to this little story point in a little bit.
later on.
So what have we got? We've got the next story point, and this is just before the third act, is I've called it the hot splash.
All right.
So we've just talked to them, and they're on the way back, and then it might be a week later, or a month later, or something or other. I'm
And
not sure.
the plan is for the splashdown to
Well, we
to
have
happen
to wait.
off course.
Wait, yes,
It's gonna.
but we have to be very careful about what the plan is, because when you say what the plan is, you're referring to what Kellaway, the NASA director, told them at the start the plan was.
And I believe it was still going to be the plan.
Do you believe this was actually the
Yeah,
plan?
Yeah, I
because
think the plan was
they got
to-
put in their they got into
Yeah.
their suits and stuff like that. I think they were of the belief that they would be taken to this point in the
So-
ocean 2 hours north
I think
of where
that
they
was
were
the
supposed
actual
to.
plan. Yes, the
Okay.
actual plan was
The
not
plan
that the
was not to
spaceship-
kill them.
Okay,
No.
so the actual plan was that the spaceship would land somewhere away from everybody else.
Yes, 2
and they'd-
hours to the north.
and they'd quickly send them out in a little boat and
Get
they'd
in the capsule,
get in the
which is
capsule,
bobbing around in
and
the
say,
ocean.
Oh, whoa, here we are.
And then the ship is steaming, takes
Mm-hmm.
2 hours for the ship to get there and find them, and they crack it open. Oh, it's great to be back.
What a great trip.
And
we
that
had.
was the plan.
Okay, that was
What
the plan,
happened to the plan?
yeah. Well, red lights on consoles start flashing when they're starting to land. And the heat shield.
gave in.
Yeah, it went kaput and it burned up and it exploded.
Exploded into bits, and now we're fucked. Well, the 3 guys are fucked because now they know they can't come back.
They know that they're stuffed.
Because they have a discussion in their room.
Yes, they
well,
do.
they don't even actually know that the heat shield's kaput.
No, they heard the broadcast. Like they're
you
listening
sure?
they're listening to the broadcast. Otherwise, they can't have that discussion.
Okay, well, they do have that
They
discussion.
definitely have the discussion
Okay.
saying we're dead.
Yeah.
We're dead. Because I think the quote is one of them says...
That's right, we're
One
dead,
of them
yes.
says we're dead, and the other one says... where is it? I got it here.
Some joke about, but I was having a wonderful time or something.
Yeah. It says,
Pithy.
We are dead. We are dead. And the other one says, shit, I was such a terrific guy.
Something
That
like
would have been the Sam Waterston character.
Probably.
One of those moments
Willis.
that weren't funny.
Okay, so this is an interesting plot twist,
Yes.
which
Yes.
means that Kellaway kind of isn't really the bad guy. They killed the NASA nerd.
No, he's
somebody
definitely-
killed the NASA
Gotta
nerd.
do what he's gotta do.
Well, at this stage, he's trying to
You're in
save...
it.
Kellaway's trying to save everyone, right?
But he killed the NASA
But
nerd.
but up
in a
until
second,
now,
or
saving
somebody did.
everyone just meant lying,
Had to
right?
be done.
Now, saving everyone means murder.
Yeah.
He can't save everyone's job and the program and the future and all this stuff
Well, he already
without
killed one
taking
person.
out 3 astronauts.
He already
has to
killed
kill-
one person and tried to kill a reporter.
Yeah.
What we don't see in the movie, which I think at this stage I'd like to see, is I'd like to see Kellaway cracking up a bit.
Playing with the
I'd like to see
dilemma.
Yeah, the scene where Kellaway's in the mirror and he's got a whiskey or something or other, and he's talking to himself, and he says something like,
Yeah.
"This is getting out of control."
There's no anguish.
Yeah. I didn't want anybody to die. I was just
think
trying.
I think he's just too smart. I think all the contingencies have already been anticipated.
Well, that's very NASA.
Yeah.
Well, then that also means that he is actually
he would have been prepared
he-
to kill them all along.
right. So that means from the very day one, he was a vicious prick.
Well, he knew to tell them that the wives were in the plane when he was trying to get them on board at the start. He knew that that's what they would say if they said, no, we're not going to
And I got the feeling that he knew that would work. If he played that card, then
Yeah.
they have to do the lie. It doesn't matter even if they are in the plane.
Yep.
There is or isn't a bomb. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
They have to follow along.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now they've realised they're buggered, right? They know that they're dead. They're going to be killed because it's the only way that that the plan can work.
Yeah.
So they have to escape.
Have to get out of there.
Yep. So they break out of their room,
Yep.
jump into a nearby airplane.
Yep.
That airplane, I think, had just brought them in from somewhere else.
I think you're right.
They jump into that airplane, and then they take off and they fly, and then they realise they got no fuel.
And they got a nice takeoff scene.
Yes.
Being
right.
chased by cars and
right.
not being able to. O.J. Simpson's hanging out the
Trying to
side,
close
trying
the
to
door.
close the bloody
door.
door.
I
that
don't
doesn't-
quite understand why that was really
Why
important.
the door was so important.
Tension.
I thought the same thing, and then I thought to myself, if you're doing what's the takeoff speed?
I don't
At
know,
least
but I
200
guess
k's
you
an
have
hour.
to. You don't want those eddies going around.
If you're doing
slowing you down.
200 k's an hour and the door hits a car, it may tear the complete side of the plane off altogether. So I did think of that. I thought, well, who cares about the door? But then again, I think you hit an immovable or hit a 1-ton object like that with the door.
Don't they hit the car anyway with the
Well,
wheel?
They do with the wheel.
Yeah.
I think it was more for building tension. Perhaps there could have been a better device for building
I
tension.
thought it was nice.
And there of course was some
It was
cinematic
ridiculous nice.
issues
You know?
with the sequence because from all the front scenes you can see that the door is actually up.
This was an example of where they had really bad, inappropriate humor inside the cockpit. So there's like, and then they're like, and then they take off, and then they're suddenly, now we don't have any fuel.
Yeah.
And so what does Joker, what's his name, say?
Willis?
He turns to the pilot and says, I've told you 100 times, always check the fuel before you take off. And the thing is that we never see him tell.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been cool if they were in the rocket ship, you know.
Yeah.
and
Did
he's
you check the fuel?
Yeah. And he says, dude, the fuel's fine.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, so anyway, that was an example of one of the ones that kind of fell a bit flat.
Yep.
Speaking of falling a bit flat,
Belly down.
now do you think that they wrecked a nice second-hand Learjet that they'd bought or hired for the weekend in the plane crash sequence?
Well, judging by the lack of scratches to the paint job, they pretty much brought it in and
Carefully
gently put it down
carefully buried it up to it.
and then put a bit of sand around it.
Yeah. And I do remember in another one of the shots, which was a bit derpy, they obviously had a mirror on rubber bands. This is for the crash sequence in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And so somebody's like poking it, so it's like going wobble, wobble, wobble. But I'm sure that the two dudes sitting in the cockpit were just like sitting there, you know.
yeah.
The camera was going bananas.
Relative to the seat and the wall, they're not moving
Yeah,
at all.
that's right.
So the only thing, what's that? There's a famous thing. Was it, Contact with
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster in the sequence where she goes in the sphere to the other realm or whatever. It's going like this, and then as soon as she takes her seatbelt off, she realizes that the only thing going like this is the outside, like she's not moving at all. Like it's a yes, continue, Dan. So they've crashed, and now it's come up with a plan for survival. So what's the plan they come up with to survive?
Which I don't get. You gotta explain that to me. Because they're flying in a plane, they know which direction they're heading, they know where the closest town is. Presumably they were navigating. So
Well,
why
they
do
didn't talk about to us, the audience, that they knew where they were going. I imagined that they were just going to fly 700,000 kilometres across the planet to somewhere else.
700,000.
Well, they were going to go a long way away.
Yeah.
All they needed to do was find a settlement. They only needed to find a city or a town. I think he even says that. All we have to do is find someone that can see us.
And then the game's up.
And then the game's up.
Yeah. So they split up. One goes north, one goes east, one goes west.
And the plan is find people.
But they're in the
find
middle of a
town,
desert, so-
but they are literally in the middle of a desert.
And they divvy up some rations.
Yes, they have some water that they find.
They've
and
got
they
one
have-
ration pack that
Most
they
importantly,
split
they have
the things up.
Flares. That's important for the story. They
They get a flare each.
They get a
One
flare
for
each
each.
with
And
the
what's-
instructions.
What's the plan for the flares?
If one gets caught,
So that the others know that they've been caught,
yeah.
which is how does that
I
help?
don't know why that's
How does
useful.
that help their
It's-
individual situation?
It is absolutely useful for storytelling and cinematography.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
And there's guns and various other things
Yeah,
in
I'd
the
shoot his
One
foot
gun.
off. And,
There's one gun. Yeah.
yeah, and a mirror and
no
matches.
water.
That's right. Oh, they shared the water.
Oh, did they have water? I don't know.
No, they
Tins.
yeah,
they
a
had
couple
tins of water.
Okay.
They had a tin
yeah,
of
they-
water.
oh
each
yeah,
of them.
the wee little
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
tins of
Okay,
water.
so they walk off into the desert
yes, in
We'll-
different directions.
in different directions.
One goes north.
Yep.
One goes east.
And
One goes west. I
or
think it
whatever.
is.
Yes, that is how it was.
Yes.
Meanwhile, there's other story elements happening at the same time.
With the reporter,
Yeah, with the reporter. So he's gone back over to
the wife's house.
Brubaker's
Brubaker's
wife. So Brubaker's the hero, and he's gone over to visit the wife.
Yep.
He's going to do a quick interview with her.
Yeah.
And
that-
He'd rather be the clumsy buffoon that blurts stuff out. He dances around the
he doesn't give her any information.
Yeah, no,
he doesn't tell her what's going on.
Like his theory, he
Yeah.
clearly has a theory, but he doesn't talk to her with any sort of facts at all.
No, he says, my friend has a thing, and I want to know a
But
small...
I'm terribly sorry. I'm
Yeah,
really
you
sorry to
have
be
any-
here and awkwardness and blah blah blah. And instead, it sort of puts off a conversation. Nothing more frustrating as an audience member to know that a conversation is supposed to happen here or could happen here that doesn't. It's just frustrating.
Oh, well, he's being careful. He can't. He has no evidence in
Yeah,
nothing. He
yeah.
can't say drop a bomb like that on her.
yeah, fair call.
So they discussed the fact that in that phone call, he said, Brubaker, or whatever his name is, said that they went to Yosemite National Park last year on holidays when they didn't actually go there. They went to Flat Rock
We went to the Yosemite the year before. I
the
think
year
she said.
before.
Yeah.
Why did they put that in there? The riders. That
If
makes
I
it less
if I
confusing.
said to my wife, remember how we went to Tasmania in 2018? She would go, yeah, idiot, it was 2017. but
yeah.
yeah. That's-
Well, that's kind of what his wife sort of does. She
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
twig that it's important. She
Yeah,
just thinks
yeah.
he's a bit mistaken.
And
or
the only
something
reason
or
I think
other.
he said that, maybe, if I'm bringing common sense to the thing, is he sort of knows that the NASA head guy, I keep forgetting his name,
Kellaway.
I think Kellaway would have known that he went to Yosemite. You know what I mean? Like if he had said, "Oh, we went to Tahiti last year," and he knows that Kellaway
so he's
would
trying
have
to
known.
he's trying to do a half sneaky
Yes,
clue that
trying to do
only
sneaky,
she would know.
But half sneaky, yes.
Okay, but here's the thing. Then Caulfield says, "So you went to Flat Rock last year?" And she says, "Yes, we've got a film of it." And so he says, "Oh, can I watch the film?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Yeah, fine, okay, watch the film."
And how amazing was it that how they can do these special effects?
Because there were fake cowboys.
There was cowboys and stunting and
jumping off things.
Yeah, how they can fake something and it can look so
Make it
real.
look
That's
so
right,
real.
and that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
Bro, my husband Brubaker thought it was so amazing that they could fake things and make them look real.
Wow. And there's a Columbo moment right there, isn't it? Like he's put it all together.
So then Caulfield puts it all together and he's got 2 + 2 = 4.
And so I'll go to Flat Rock,
yeah. What, I get.
which has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. He
There's
goes.
astronauts out there. There's no one there.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Like he must have spent 16
Except a
hours
bullet waiting for it. Well, it seemed like a good idea.
Well, anyway, okay, so there's a little story. So this is where we get into a bit of strange stuff. There's a whole bunch of these little side quests that Caulfield kind of goes off on that I don't know if they're necessary for the movie. Like he goes to Flat Rock and somebody shoots at him and he dives behind a thing and then he comes home again.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
why?
Well, it's second attempt on his life. It's all in a day's work for a reporter.
But here's my question for you. Imagine you're Brubaker and you're trying to send a secret message to your wife.
Yeah.
When you went to Flat Rock, you were amazed and you remember telling her time and time again, these camera things are freaking amazing. Do you know that, blah, blah, blah. That's not even real. Check this, darling. See, it's all fake. So he told her 100 times how fake it was at Flat Rock.
Yeah.
And so his plan is, when he's flying around in space, is to say to his wife, remember the time we went to Yosemite? Wink. That was his plan?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she would somehow, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Not
There
to
are a
mention
few
that,
coincidences in there, just like the fact that when the biplane comes and saves Brubaker at the end. What amazing luck
yeah.
that they were there right then when it counted.
But even the dropping of the hint they're already lying to the world when they're in that moment, the 3 astronauts, right? And he's dropping this hint. What's it going to gain? What are you doing? Like, you still have to come back to the planet. Can't you just tell her then? Like, what are you hoping that
can't
she'll
take
do?
it anymore.
She'll do what with that information?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
There's no benefit to that. There's just a Hollywood reason for it.
We can
Yeah.
No, the benefit is that the writers can allow Caulfield
Yes.
to put 2 and 2 together. That's the
Exactly
benefit
right.
of
Yes.
it, right?
Exactly right.
If another way to look at it is in real life, maybe he's flustered and he doesn't quite know what to do, so he's just going to say, Yellow Rock. He's just having a stab in the dark. Maybe something will happen.
Yep.
But I think a cooler thing for the story would have been if they got together, the 3 of them, and the 3 of them said something quirky on that way back.
Yep.
One said, remember Yellow Rock, and the other one said, remember how I like ice cream, when everybody knows he doesn't like ice cream.
Yeah.
That's too suspicious.
Oh, well.
Too obvious.
Well, but something only their wives would know.
Yeah.
And then the wives would start talking with each other, and they'd be like,
Yep.
that's a bit of a weird thing to say, because he doesn't like ice cream.
Yep.
Yeah, but again, as Dave said, they're on their way home anyway. They could just wait another week and tell them.
Yep.
Okay, so the next we have to introduce 2 of the coolest characters.
The helicopter.
Pilots.
The helicopters are brilliant because they're sort of a faceless
Terminator.
nemesis,
Yeah.
Terminator type thing.
They're black.
And you hear their voice, you hear their noise, and it's like a growl of a beast that's hunting them, right? And you get the sense that it's futile. They can
They're
go anywhere,
Terminators.
they can land anywhere they want.
They'll never stop.
Yeah, and even when you saw the pilots, they were faceless pilots.
Yes.
They had the mirrored sort
Yes.
of
Got
glasses.
the visors down when even going into a building.
Yeah. very maneuverable helicopters too. There's that classic scene where they sort of come in like this and then they turn and face each other like
Yes,
that,
yeah.
and they come down to land.
Yes.
There's no reason for that, but it looked great.
There's even better scene, in my opinion, where the two of them are flying parallel with each other.
And they cross over.
No. Much better than that. One of them, if you can see my hands, one of them turns to this one.
Yeah.
And then this one turns to that one, and then the pair of them
That's
peel
right.
off
Yeah,
to
like
the
they're
left.
talking to one another.
Yeah, it's like they're these monsters looking at each other, and they're like, "Come on this way, let's go."
And there's no markings. They're sort of army green.
Black and almost.
Are they black?
Oh,
Yeah, they're black.
yeah.
I swear they were green.
No, dark color.
Dark
doesn't matter.
green. The
Dark
They were
foreboding.
they were greeny black.
Yep.
And they you're absolutely right. They became characters in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
They're even on
memorable.
posters, aren't they?
Hey.
They're even on posters because that's such an important part.
Yeah,
Yep.
look at
Yep.
all of these. I think they're on all of the.
But
pages.
then
They're in a
Telly
lot of the-
Savalas is also on a lot of posters.
Yeah, he's a big,
He's just not a very important. Well, he's an important character, but he's not there until the.
It's
last
weird how
quarter
he
of the
turns
film.
up and he just has this massive presence right at
I
the
think
end.
he's a
Very
coup. He turned up in a lot of
famous.
films in the 70s and early 80s, and he was such a presence.
He must have been
One of my all-time favourites was
Bringer, yeah.
Kelly's Heroes.
Yeah, that's a
with
great
Clint
movie.
Eastwood behind Enemy Lines to Steal the Gold.
Yeah.
And his character in that
Yeah.
film was just incredible.
Yeah.
But same character.
All right, so we're back in the desert, and we've got to investigate some fate that's about to happen.
Well, who's the first to go? Who's the first to fire the flare?
Who's the first?
OJ.
Well, yes, we can't
Is
remember
it
his
OJ?
real
OJ.
name.
It's OJ.
Yeah.
His character's name we can't remember, and it's OJ.
Well, OJ's character's name is
John someone.
John Walker.
Okay, so
Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker. And so, how does he meet his fate?
Well, he's in the throes of severe
Gets a
dehydration.
bit thirsty,
Um,
hallucinating.
Yeah, he's hallucinating and everything's blurry and he thinks, what does he think it is? Is it birds? What does he think?
They're
Yeah, I think it's
vultures
birds.
or
And
something.
I
it
think
is
it's vultures or
footage.
something.
There is birds. They have footage of birds. You can see the wings going
That's
up
right.
and down. It's out of focus.
Two
Yeah.
black.
Two black birds
Yeah.
out of
Birds.
focus.
Yeah.
And then they crossfade into these helicopters.
Yeah, that's
Jump,
right,
jump,
coming
jump,
towards
jump,
him.
jump, jump, jump.
And there's this moment where he sort of releases himself to his fate, I think.
They just
in
land right next to him,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah. And we
And-
never get to see anyone killed
No,
by
don't need
another
to.
by another
That's right.
person, do
That's-
we?
That's
Yeah.
what the flares are for.
Yeah, very good. That's their soul
Mm.
leaving their body.
Going
Deep.
up to heaven.
The thing that I didn't like, though, was that Johnny Walker, just dies like a loser. Right?
Yeah.
He gets all hot and bothered, and he gets lost, and he falls over and gets dirty, and he scrapes his knee, and he cries, and then he just dies.
It's heavy. It's heavy.
Makes it that
You're
way.
right. No, you're right.
Whereas the other guy climbs a friggin' cliff, and the other guy eats a friggin' rattlesnake,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, man.
You're right. OJ buys the farm in a really simple way. Like he doesn't go with any great bravado.
Like, he's supposed to be an astronaut from, you know, and they've got the right stuff,
Yeah,
right?
with survival training and all
So
the rest
I would
of
have
it.
expected him to make a bow and arrow out of a cactus or something or other and fire it at, you know, at the helicopters.
I think he dies in the fetal position. Does he not? I think he
probably
does.
does.
He crawls up in the fetal position underneath a bush on the side of a dried up riverbed.
Yeah, and just gives up and says,
And
fuck it.
fires his flare.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, second to go.
Second to go is another main character who we can't remember their name.
Sam
Willis.
Waterston's character.
Willis?
Willis.
His name is Willis, Peter Willis, and he decides because this is what you do in a desert
He's a
when
very
you haven't got much water.
minded fellow, right? And he says,
I've
I'm
decided
walking.
I'm going west.
Yes.
So, and there's a mountain, so I'm going to go up that cliff, and then climbs the cliff.
Yes. And when on the final thing, when you actually pull back, it's not like it's a freaking
Oh, it's a cliff.
It's a
Yeah,
gigantic.
it's about 200
cliff.
meters high cliff,
Yeah.
and he decides to climb the cliff to add a little bit of difficulty to the task. He's going to tell jokes to himself while he's climbing
Yeah.
the cliff.
Yes. And just as he's finished the joke and gets to the end with the punchline with lots of humming and ahhing and scraping and
Yeah.
clawing and a great big relief, he climbs over the very, very top bit.
And there's two helicopters sitting
There's
right
two
there,
black
which have
helicopters.
obviously landed at some point, and he would have heard
A
the
while
noise.
ago.
Yes, he didn't hear the helicopter.
He should have gone back down the cliff.
Too
So-
loud telling jokes.
Fire the flare.
Maybe there's a shot missing, and it's like he looks around, and both of them they're like having a picnic or something, rather
they
than
didn't
just
know he
having
was
lunch.
there.
And they're,
They-
oh, we found him.
Yeah, they didn't know he was there. So second flare fired.
That's the end of him.
Now we're down to one astronaut who is Charles Brubaker, or father of Thanos.
Father of Thanos. He does all sorts of things. He buries himself in sand, and he bites the heads off rattlesnakes.
That's right.
and-
He gets real scorpions crawling on
That
his
was
face.
a fantastic shot.
Yeah.
That was really good because it's such an
Absolutely.
incredibly close-up shot of the scorpion. And you think it's on rock.
Yeah.
You see this rock, but then out of focus is an ear, and you realize it's actually on a shoulder of a dude, but it's just full of sand.
Yeah.
And it's actually the actor.
I've
And he
seen
has
behind the scenes.
Real
There's a scorpion wrangler.
on his
Yeah.
face because going into
Yeah.
his mouth. It
Yeah.
goes to touch his mouth until he jumps up.
Yeah.
So that's
That's acting wound up to 12.
in James Bond film.
He's got the right stuff.
When Sean Connery gets attacked by a tarantula, you can see that there's a glass pane behind, but above them. The tarantula is on glass. You can sort of see the way it's walking. It's not touching his skin. This scorpion is indenting his skin. It's really there.
Oh, it's him.
fantastic.
I've seen behind the scenes,
And
and there's a
very
tarantula, a scorpion wrangler,
Yeah.
placing the bloody thing on his shoulder while he's and just lying in the dirt, covered by dirt in the middle of the desert like that might be too much for some people. But to have real live scorpions,
Crawling
only
into your
certain
mouth.
scorpions
Yeah.
are poisonous, though, aren't they? I'm pretty
I
sure.
think they're all venomous, but maybe they milk them so that there's not so much venom in them at the time. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they cut the little stinger off.
Now we
Fake stinger.
The
At this point-
shot was so close up. You didn't
It
see the
was.
skin. You just saw the face of the scorpion,
Yeah.
and which was great because it slowly reveals that it's on a human
yeah,
face.
it's a great sequence.
One of the best shots
Really
in the
good
film,
sequence. And obviously the helicopters are going overhead while this is all happening too, which is why he can't move. Now we have to cut to the sequence with the reporter has somehow got a map out and narrowed it down to a 300 meter. Where does he get that information from again?
Okay, so what happens is that he goes off on all of these side quests. The CIA plant
even
drugs
goes-
in his house
That's right. He gets picked up. The CIA plant drugs. They lock him up. He gets bailed out
by his employer.
by his employer.
He gets fired.
He
They have
gets
a big
fired.
thing
Then he
and
gets picked up by the cockeyed
girlfriend, chick.
girlfriend who gives him money in a car.
In a car, yeah.
And they do have witty banter. They're really good. They're really sharp, witty banter between them. That's really
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. I like the boss though. He was
The
pretty
movie
funny.
quoting dude.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
He's famously Bosley from the Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And he's the editor of the newspaper.
One of the funny lines, one of the best lines, I reckon, is when Caulfield is trying to tell all of his bullshit
48
stories.
hours.
Yeah, all this bullshit that's happening to him, and his editor just totally doesn't believe him.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then somebody shot at me. And then his editor says, well, thank God I've got an alibi.
But I like how he says, "Give me 48" with some movie quote. Give me 48 hours, and then the guy goes, "I'll give you 24 because I saw the movie too, and you only get 24."
And so he calls up his Janet girlfriend, and she does some
That's right.
research, and the only base in the area is this base, and
Yep.
it's there. So he's
It's got to be that one.
So he goes to that one.
Yep.
Now, this is where the writers, apart from sticking in all of these side quests, which I really don't think added much to the story.
It does show that he's trying different avenues. He's not
And he needs
clued in yet.
confirmation.
He doesn't quite know. He needs to search different areas. There has to be some dead ends.
He does
I think
find
that's good.
confirmation. He finds dog tags.
Yeah, but the things that he does on those side quests, going to jail, getting caught by the FBI, being
Yeah, that was
grilled by his boss, those things didn't have anything to do with
They
him
weren't
finding out
Yep.
about the secret.
Yep.
Essentially, his girlfriend says, well, this is the only army base that's nearby. So he says, all right, I'll go there. And he goes there and he finds Brubaker's necklace and then he leaves.
Yep.
And it's like, okay. And that's where the writers, I'm sure, said, and then he finds the MacGuffin and it's all happy.
Yep.
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 So anyway, he does that.
Yep.
Which
So-
means he's in the area.
So he's managed to work out that they've got to be within a certain radius of that base, and that's when he finds the crop duster.
yes,
Have-
he's
have
going to
I-
need to do
have
a
I-
bit of searching.
Have I travelled the narrative that is this story to the right point? Am I at the right point now?
I think so.
Okay.
So it's Telly Savalas.
Yep.
You've already explained,
Yep.
you know.
Famously, Telly Savalas hates flying.
Yes.
Like he hates planes.
Interesting.
So I don't think he was in any of the pilot. I don't know. He might have
It's
been.
only the blue screen shot.
Remember
Put your
the
bloody head down.
remember the pilot had a cap on, had big goggles on, and a big scarf on.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
couldn't really tell who it was.
Yep.
And then, they just go on this fucking insane dogfight between the biplane and the two black helicopters.
No. You skipped a scene. Like Brubaker finds a service station in the middle of nowhere. It's closed down.
Okay, yep.
Right, he's hiding inside. He's feverishly looking for some way
To call people
I
or
think
whatever.
he even finds a quarter.
Yeah.
He breaks into property of the Coca-Cola company.
That's what he does do. Steals a quarter.
He has to justify himself in front, just like in the
That's
what's
right.
it?
And he manages
The
to.
other movie, Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're right. And he manages to get through to his wife. But where's his wife gone? To his funeral.
His funeral.
Yep.
Yeah.
Missed her by 4 minutes or something
Yeah.
like that. She's only just walked out of the house.
Yeah, and I was thinking, they don't have mobile phones back in those days.
Which I thought was pretty good
Which
as
you
far
wouldn't.
as suspense and trying to work out, is this thing going to end well, like this movie? At that point, I wasn't sure whether this would be a Hollywood happy ending. Coming from the 70s, you never really knew. So he gets through, nobody at home, and then the two helicopters land just outside the
For
back.
some reason, they know that he's in there.
Yeah. For some reason, they know where all these guys are, like clinging to a cliff and hiding under a bush.
Defending the helicopter guys, they could be just like guessing. It's like, let's just go and
he's
search
probably
the
in there.
building.
Yeah.
If I was him, I'd hide in that building.
So for the first time, we see the pilots come out of the helicopters to come over to the servo, and a fight ensues. A fight.
Is that the only time we see the helicopter
I
pilots?
don't think I've
That's the
seen them
only
before
time we
that.
see them. Yeah.
So my question would be, why do we ever need to see them? Why couldn't the helicopters have flown around the gas tank?
I like the fact that we did see them.
Yeah, they're looking in through the window.
Yeah.
They're coming in. He's there with a little wrench and slamming it into the
It
pilot's
gives him the head
helmet.
start to run for the biplane.
Run for
Because
the-
right at the moment
He
he
doesn't know
dives through
there's
the
a
window
biplane.
to escape, the biplane flies overhead and sees him running.
He runs. He hasn't seen the biplane yet. He jumps through the window
Yeah,
and
he's-
starts running
He's
into the
literally
desert,
just running,
knowing full well he's a pilot. Why doesn't he jump into a helicopter?
Yes.
At least fly
He
that
should
off.
have jumped in the
That's a
helicopter.
good thought. That's a good thought.
Yeah, you're right. He should have done that. Yeah, he should have done that. So he's saved. He jumps onto the wing of the biplane.
Yeah.
Had the helicopters taken off?
No.
No,
One of
they're
one of the-
shooting. They're shooting behind
with
him.
the pistol.
That's
Ping.
right. They're shooting. That's right. So that's why he had to do everything on the run and jump on.
And there was
not
no
get in
time to get organised,
That's
and he's
right.
hanging onto the wing.
He's hanging onto a wire.
Yeah. and they
Okay,
take
cool.
off.
And they take off.
And then they go into the most blistering dogfight,
Yep.
between the two helicopters and the biplane.
Yep.
Just going high speed, crazy action.
And I
close.
think pace-wise, they'd probably be close, wouldn't they? As far as speed. Maximum speed, like one of those helicopters and a biplane would almost be roughly the same. Because helicopters
sure.
aren't known for their forward speed.
Like
Like they got to literally tip
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this to go forward.
yeah.
So speed-wise, they're probably about the same speed.
Yeah. I'd say it's certainly, I don't know, and it's long too. It's a good 10 minutes worth of just crazy
Canyon flying and up, over and under, and it's 2 versus 1.
Yeah.
It's 2 versus 1. There's no need for a chase. You could just gently fly behind the biplane,
Yeah,
looking at the fuel, checking that somebody's going to run out first.
yeah.
The helicopters got 2 machine guns on each of their helicopter legs.
Did they have?
Yeah,
guns?
yeah. So
yeah.
they're like, they can be like daka and shooting at him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not hitting anything.
But I did know one of the shots when as soon as the helicopters opened up, the biplane instantly peels away. So it was they were
Yeah.
putting in,
They do a
so-
somersault at some
There's
point.
Yeah, he does
With
a
the guy
full-
on the wing.
There's
Yeah.
one of those shots where the cliched the plane is heading for the cliff, and the chaser is behind it, and then at the last moment the plane goes up and the helicopter flies into the
Well,
cliff.
it's
it's a
better
crop
than that.
duster. It's a
Right.
crop duster, right?
Yeah,
So he says, pull that
That's
lever.
right, that's
when
right.
I tell you, pull that
that's
lever.
right. Pop the smoke.
Yeah.
Now, the actual same shot was used in an episode of
Of 18.
of the A-Team.
Oh, really?
Except the pilots. Have you ever watched the A-Team? Have you noticed that no matter how many times a car flips or goes
Yeah,
off a
yeah.
cliff or whatever, they always walk
It's
away?
a kiddie show. It's a
the,
kid show.
the
and they
people always
could not-
walk away.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
helicopter hits the cliff, breaks
Okay.
into 1,000 pieces with a big explosion, but then you always see this little tiny 2-second shot where the guy walks away.
Yeah, and he's got some Wipes his cheek. Oh man!
Just shakes
He
his
did the
head.
same thing in the first Hulk movie where he throws this tank. Hulk throws, swirls, and throws it 30 kilometers over there, and it crashes on a sand dune. And then the two pack drivers drive out, shake their woozy. What a ride!
It's kid safe. It's kid friendly.
Yep.
So do we actually see them get away from the second helicopter?
No, they
Or-
both helicopters
Both
crash
of them.
and die.
They
Okay.
go into telly smoke and
Yep.
they don't
Okay,
see
cool. All right. Cut to funeral.
Funeral.
Right?
Yep.
President.
Military funeral. President's there. Everybody in black. The full military guard of honor.
Yep.
And speeches are being made. And then what do we see?
We see Brew, who hasn't had even time to comb his hair.
No.
He's still got
Straight from the biplane.
straight from with a rattlesnake in one pocket and,
Yep.
the head bitten off a scorpion in his teeth.
Yep.
Comes running in very slow motion across the gravestones
Yep.
to his wife.
And 300 kilometres, roughly. Remember, he called her from the service station.
That's right. Yeah,
And
she was on the way. And they should have a shot with her looking at her watch. It's like, this is fucking long.
5 hours we've been here. But what I loved about this sequence was that it was cut to slow-mo, right, of them running from the car to the crowd at the graveside. And it was that Bo Derek running slow-mo on the beach
Yeah.
with the hair, the wavy 70s hair flowing. And there was something almost like they weren't taking it seriously when they were running in that sequence. There was something that didn't seem like there was
It's
a
also
serious nature
the music,
of it.
I think that helps because
That
the
helped.
moment the car appeared, the music started changing.
That's right.
And came into this happy,
Orchestral,
melancholy
yeah, yeah,
orchestral
yeah.
music.
Yeah.
And the wife turns around and can't believe and looks at her children and looks forward and looks
That's right.
back again. And then there's this one shot where all the cameras that are trained on like 4 TV cameras trained on the president all turn around in unison
Yeah.
to go over in that
Yep.
direction.
Yep. And then it's freeze frame.
Oh, you have the reaction shot of the NASA head of NASA who sort of realizes that the
That's
gig's
right.
up.
Yep. He's buggered. And it ends on a freeze frame. And there's nothing worse than
Slow motion to
it's
freeze
clearly
frame.
a long shot that's been cropped in, right? So the noise grain in the shot is massive, and then it freezes, and so all you see is this static noise that have just frozen in the shot, and then the credits roll. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I thought the only way to improve that would be to have him like jump out of the Telly Savalas airplane and parachute in or something or other.
Top of Harley
Get killed half the way on impact and get in a bush somewhere and not found.
Yeah, and Telly
Hello.
Savalas yells out,
You pervert!
"Yeah, you owe me $1 million, you perverts!"
That's right. Okay, so we come to the end of the film. The important thing we need to do now is rate it and grade it in our rating system. Remind me, it feels like forever. Buy,
Burn.
burn, borrow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not in that order, but yeah.
What do you give it, Dan?
It's a buy. It's a buy.
So
Yeah.
you'd have it in your collection.
It's a buy. It should be up there. I haven't got a copy, but it should be up there.
Yep.
If I go onto the internet one day in
Yep.
a slightly crazy mood and I see that
Yep.
for $5, I'd buy it straight away.
That's what I'm
$2
thinking.
bin
If it's a
Blu-ray
$2
special.
bin,
Yeah.
if it's a $2 bin, even DVD special,
Yep.
then buy. Yeah. Otherwise, I buy films that I rewatch,
Yep.
and it's a film I saw as a teenager, and then only recently again.
So there's a
very
sentimental
second time.
connection that also would prompt part of that purchase as
Mm.
well, like aside from its cinematic brilliance.
But it's not a film I would rewatch for the amusement
No.
part of it.
I think it's one of those. Would you call it a 15-year film? Like it's the sort of thing that you would dig out and watch every 15, at least once
I
every
think
15
definitely-
years.
Definitely
Experience
15
tells me
years.
it's probably a 25-year film.
25,
No, I'm down to 15.
15. Yeah, I'm with
15.
Dan. I'd say it's between 15 and
I
20
have
year
more
film.
films to watch. I just can't fit it in. I don't have that kind of time that you gentlemen have.
All right, so I think it's unanimous that we would all have it in our collections.
I'll just add to that, just before we wrap up, is that on IMDb it's got a score of 6.8.
Oh,
That's not too bad. How many
Well-
people? How many votes?
out of 10.
18,000.
Yeah, that's healthy.
That's massive.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
And I've read lots of the reviews, and there are only two types of reviews.
Yep.
There are people who give it 10 out of 10.
Yep.
And that's most people. And then there is
Three.
one.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Dragging it down.
Yes, people either give it 10 or 1.
Who are the people who give it 1 though?
Weirdos.
Yeah. But if not for the weirdos,
the
right,
conspiracy
this would be a
doesn't go
10
far
out of
enough.
10 film, and we can't have that.
I'll tell you, the people that don't like it, they say things like, this is totally unbelievable. If NASA had any of that, they'd never do something like that.
That
because
has nothing to do with
No,
the
no,
quality of a movie. That
Yes.
doesn't belong in a rating at all.
Right, so that's half of it.
Yeah.
And then there's another small segment of people that are like, I don't like conspiracy theories, and this movie's got a conspiracy theory in it, and I'm giving it 1.
Oh, God. You got to rate the ratings.
Yes.
Have a system in there.
Yes, a meta rating, and it's like, I'm giving you 1.
All right, gentlemen, that's it for another show. Thank you for dropping in for our first show for 2019. We hope to do...
We hope to double that by the end of the year.
Absolutely. We hope to do another show this year.
100%
The plan
increase.
being moving forward that we should do at least one show a month, but if we can come down to maybe one every couple of weeks, but let's try to lock in at least one show per month. As always, reach out via Facebook, Twitter, any of the other social channels, and we'll see if we can get to some of your suggestions. That'd always be great. That's it from me. Until next time, gentlemen. Bye for now.
Wiedersehen.
Catch up.
What is your purpose here? How many of you are there?